We have chaos at the tight end and wide receiver positions here in Week 11. Here to help us sort it all out is Chris Meaney from FTN Fantasy and Mean Streets here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by NoHouseAdvantage.com. I'm Jeff Erickson. My guest today is Chris Meaney. You can catch him on FTN Fantasy. He has Mean Streets. He does a lot of other work on the FTN Fantasy Podcast. Chris, glad we could hook up. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Yes, I am so thrilled that we're able to hook up here. I appreciate the invite. I'm looking forward to this. We're getting into crunch time of the fantasy football season. Last week we got through it, I think, with all those buys, but we do have some injuries this week, some crazy weather potentially in Buffalo, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to this episode, and thanks a lot for the invite, man.
Absolutely. So let's start right there with Buffalo. How do we handle this news? There's possibly 3 feet of snow supposed to hit in a 72-hour period here, maybe even less than that, actually, is in terms of the time frame. I know it's not always the case that snow, like a snowstorm, will kill passing offenses, but it's not good either.
No, it's not at all. And they're reporting anywhere from 3 to 6 feet of snow, so that's a ton. And talking to Jake Seeley this morning, who I'm sure you're very well aware of on his show, we were really just diving into that entire game, because if there's no snow, it could be a really fun fantasy game. I don't know if we could top last week between Minnesota and Buffalo. That was really, really fun to watch from a fantasy and a real life standpoint. But if you turn on the TV Sunday morning and you can't see the field and there's a blizzard and there's 3 feet of snow, and nobody's gotten on there to shovel it or get rid of some of that snow, I think you have to be a little hesitant to roll at certain pieces in that offense. I'm playing Josh Allen. I don't know if anybody's has another quarterback that they can play over Josh Allen. If you're lucky to have Justin Fields in both, I mean, good for you. That's really the only quarterback I think I would roll out over him, apart from the other couple studs up at the top. And even Stephon Diggs, I think I would play him too, Jeff. I can't imagine rolling out a different wide receiver. We've seen running backs in the past in Buffalo, in Philadelphia. LaShawn McCoy comes to mind. Nick Chubb Nick Chubb's could be fine. I think it's, a running backs, him and Singletary could get a ton of touches. But I think it just got to wait and see to see how this weather does play out. But on the Cleveland side, I guess I have more concerns about Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones, who is trending up in the offense as of late.
Well, and especially like last week, Cooper in a spot where he should have gone nuts. It's supposed to be an up and down sort of game. They were playing with a deficit the whole time, which means they're throwing the ball a little bit more. And he walks away with 3 points? I mean, it was just dreadful. I am worried about that one too. It's a good thing that Cleveland and Buffalo have been exposed to snow before. They may know how to handle it.
Yes, good call. I've been to both stadiums, and it could get chilly. It can get windy. Sure. It can get cold in a hurry. With Cleveland, I don't think their identity is going to change. You mentioned being down in the game against Miami, and Donovan Peoples-Jones had some moments, but regardless of snow or no snow, we're going to see a lot of Nick Chubb in that game. But if the weather is okay, the Bills should do enough offensively to maybe have a great game from Donovan Peoples-Jones again. I mean, 6 games in a row, he's had 4+ catches and 50 yards, no touchdowns on the season. But he is a guy that's getting a bulk of the work from Jacoby Brissett at the moment. So it's an interesting game, something we got to wait and see how the weather is going to play out. But as you said, I think both of these teams are very familiar, especially on the Buffalo side of things. They've been in this situation before.
And the funny thing is, at the start of the week, Peoples-Jones was still available in a lot of leagues. 22% available on ESPN leagues, 35% available, or rosters, I should say. 22% roster in ESPN, 35 on Yahoo. I think in like the NFFC, it's a lot different. It's pretty much gone there. But it just does show, though, that not everybody is up on him yet.
No, not really. You and I are playing each other in Jake's Flex Leagues. Another shout out to Celia. I promise it's probably the last time I'll bring up that dude.
That's all good. I like Jake.
But we're playing each other. Of course. We're playing each other this week. And, I've had Donovan Peoples-Jones kind of just tucked away on my bench. Unfortunately, I've, been dealing with some injuries now in that roster. But I think I've maybe picked him up around the time that Hollywood went down with an injury, thinking he could be okay in this offense. When we see Watson under center, that time is coming very soon. But if you just go look at the last 4 weeks, Donovan Peoples-Jones has a higher air yard share, target share, and more yards than Amari Cooper, who, as you mentioned last week, was a dead game for me. Some weird home splits going on, but I don't think there's anything that you can really dive into that. It's such a small sample size, but yeah, he is somebody to consider if we find out that the weather is okay in that game on Sunday. But I don't know. I think we're going to see a lot of snow.
Yeah. The Superflex game, the Superflex league that we're in, the Flex Leagues, Superflex League, did much better last year. I got all the free loot last year. I got Fournette. I got Connor. I got Gronk.
Oh, nice.
Got none of those this year.
I'm trending in the wrong direction, dude. I'm trending in the wrong direction in a hurry. Things can change pretty quickly.
Yeah. I will say, I think Sleeper is a great app. It's just, I am so wired into just like having bookmarking all my leagues in the browser in one folder, opening them all up, open all the tabs. It's on Sleeper. It's only on my phone. I have to like make a point of going over here and doing that.
It's different. No, it's different. I hear you.
Yeah.
You are showing your age a little bit. I'm right there with you. I'm a desktop guy. I'm sitting here. I got a couple monitors on the go, and Sunday morning I like to just to roll through some of the leagues that I have, the few high stakes, and play a lot of Yahoo and ESPN and things like that. But yeah, if you're on your phone on the run, I think it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, I just got to change I got to establish that routine. I kind of had it in one way, and then just changing your ways a little bit there. So anything on my fantasy league, I'm doing fine on. It's just on Sleeper, I feel like I'm not doing well. I'm gonna blame the platform and not the player, right? Good craftsman always blames his tools, not the other way around. Yeah. Let's look at the other quarterbacks this week. So, we're going to start Josh Allen. You're not going to start Brissett. Okay. Those are two pretty polar guys. I do have Mahomes, Field, and Hurts ahead of Allen this week. In part because of the weather, in part because Allen keeps on making mistakes, but who cares if I have him 3 versus 2 versus 4 or whatever? I mean, you're going to start him if you have him. The tricky guys are on the margins there. And I think it kind of starts like around 9 or 10 this week. I think there's like a solid core, you're starting, but like after like Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow, I think it gets a little trickier.
Yeah, it gets tricky. I mean, Kyler, there was a report that came down this morning that maybe it's another week or two with Kyler. I think if he is active, he's a guy that you want to plug in there, even against San Fran, just his rushing ability. Mm-hmm. And Rondale Moore is really trending up in that offense too. I know he lost his tight end in Zach Ertz, but Daniel Jones is a guy I always look at, and at the end of the week, he seems to be right around the QB1, low end QB1.
I've got him at 10.
High end QB2. Yeah, I got him at 11. I have him right there, with Kirk Cousins, and Jones is probably a bit of a safer play than Kirk Cousins. The matchup is much better. Detroit can't stop anybody. It gives you a bit of a rushing floor. Even he hasn't run around as much lately. Saquon is another 30, 40 carries maybe in this game coming up. But Kirk Cousins does give you that, I think, higher ceiling a little bit, even if it is Dallas. Dallas can certainly get after him, but, he's got some weapons. TJ Hawkinson trending up in the offense too, double-digit targets, I do believe, last week from him. And, you can make some plays on Dallas. Rodgers hadn't really shown us a lot all year, and he came back in that game down 2 touchdowns in the second half and hooked up with everybody's favorite waiver wire player this week in Christian Watson. So,
right.
Yeah, there's some interesting names there. What do you think about Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, he's a guy that he didn't throw any touchdowns last week, but he had 15 fantasy points. There's a lot of playmakers inside that offense. If he could just toss 2, if he could get 2 touchdowns, he might be able to finish as a low-end QB1.
Well, Ayuk dropped one in the end zone last week that almost got picked off. At least we got the quarterback sneak touchdown, so that was nice. That kind of salvaged his day. I have Jones 10, Jimmy G 11, Russell Wilson 12. I kind of put buried Rodgers. I have him at 14. Don't really love the matchup on Thursday night. I think Tennessee's just nasty to play against there.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're first in rush DVOA. They're top 10 in pass DVOA. They've given up a couple big plays in the secondary, but they are nasty. They can get after Rodgers. And again, he hasn't really shown us a whole lot. I have him at quarterback 14 too. I have Russell ahead of him, Jimmy G, Cousins, and Daniel Jones. Yeah, I mean, Russ, right? So frustrating. I forget who it was. Wish I could reference on Twitter. It just said, if they had scored 18 points, exactly 18 points in every one of their games this season, they'd be 8-1.
That's amazing. It's
amazing. It's crazy that this team defensively has been so good again this year for years, and they've been looking for this weapon to take them, to another level. And everybody thought Russell could be that guy. They spent all that capital and give him all that money. And he has shown us nothing apart from one game against the Raiders, which he'll have that matchup this week against.
I've got Jerry Jeudy in a dynasty league, and I'm like, yes, he finally gets a real quarterback.
I got Sutton in a dynasty league too. I thought maybe his 5.5 touchdown prop, his future would be a lock this season. He's got 1 touchdown. That's it. It's been very frustrating in Denver, but I think, Jeff, the ranking that you have is fair. I think for us as well is a borderline streaming option for people out there, and an upside in this matchup to be a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, it also helps that there's some viable options that are on the waiver wire. So if you have like Brady, or you have Geno Smith, who actually has been a starter this year for us, who are you streaming this week?
So if those guys were available, Jimmy and Russ, and 10-team leagues, maybe they're available. 12, probably not. Their ownership now in Yahoo, ESPN, kind of getting into the 70s now. Taylor Heineke is a guy that I am considering against the Texans this week. I know that the game plan against Houston is to run the ball, and really that's Washington's game plan too. What a beautiful game they had against the Eagles on Monday. It's the recipe I think they showed a lot of people to how to beat the Eagles. Try to sustain long drives. This is a team that likes to run on first and second down.
Right.
Even those 2 running backs weren't that efficient, Jeff, in that game, but they got a lot of carries. They extended drives, and they kept the offense in Philly off the field. I don't think they're too worried about keeping the offense of Houston off the field, but this is a team that does want to run the rock. And if they can set up maybe a little bit of play action, Terry McLaurin looks amazing here with Heineke under center over the past few games. I think he's 1 or 2 in air yard share and target share over the last 3 weeks of the season. So if you can hook up with him deep down the field, have a touchdown, you got some other guys inside that offense that can, Dotson returned last week. Maybe he's more involved. Curtis Samuel in the slot. So I think Heineke's a pretty decent streaming option. I would have liked Brissett if the weather be okay. Even against Buffalo, I may have rolled the dice on him, but I think Heineke over a guy like Carr and Tannehill, I'm not totally interested in. And I'll throw maybe Kenny Pickett for those that are in deeper formats, maybe super flex. He's got a little bit of rushing upside to his game. Last week, I think he had double-digit fantasy points. He had a rushing touchdown. I think he's got 2 or 3 on the season, maybe 3. None of his wide receivers are really scoring. Deontay's getting a lot of targets. He's not scoring touchdowns. So I understand maybe the upside is capped there, but I got him ranked at 20. So I would start him over a lot of guys, I think.
For sure. My Heineke is my top streaming option as well. Let me make the case to go ugly here and go with Marcus Mariota. Even on the Thursday night game in a monsoon, he scored 20 plus fantasy points. I mean, he was terrible. Real life, he made these awful decisions, just awful throws or non-throws in one case. 3rd and 10, like they're on the 35. Instead of throwing it away when he's under pressure, he steps out of bounds, loses 5 yards. They're out of field goal range. That sort of stuff just can't happen, but he does it all the time. But in our game, he was still a valuable fantasy piece, and he gets the Bears this week. No weather issues at all. The Bears are terrible against the pass now. They're not generating a whole lot of pass rush. I think he could put up a number. I think this actually has a sneaky shootout potential sort of game.
No, I agree with you. And maybe not to the same sort of extent as Fields, because he's running like a madman these days. Yes. It's so crazy, but he has a real nice rushing floor to a Marcus Mariota. I streamed him a couple weeks ago, Jeff, and I was pleasantly surprised. I believe it was the game against Carolina. So, just look back, talked about his rushing yard prop on Mean Streets on that Thursday night football game. It was 28.5. He ended up with 43 on 3 carries. He's 43, 24, 43, 31, 50, 61. These are some of his rushing yard games over the past few weeks. It's like, clearly you'd want this guy to throw the ball maybe a little bit more than 30 times. And he's got 2 studs on his squad. Like, let's get the ball to London and Pitts. But he's still running around a bit. He could maybe sneak a touchdown in for you. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns. So I think he can bank on 5 to 6 maybe rushing attempts. Maybe he tries to go toe-to-toe with Fields and we get a little fun environment there. But you're right. The Bears traded away a lot of their good defensive players over the past couple of weeks. It's funny how that works sometimes in the NFL. You trade away some pieces on defense, can't stop anyone. All of a sudden your offense starts clicking. And you wish you had some of those defensive players to make a stop or two. But it could be a really fun environment this weekend between those 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, my colleague Jeff Mance said that, he's a big Bears fan. And he's like, this is perfect. Fields is developing.
Yeah.
And they're still losing, so they might get a top 5 pick, 3-7 now.
Good
They're
call.
a half game behind the Lions even at this point in time because they haven't had their bye yet. Speaking of Fields, Jared has a problem that I think a lot of Fields owners might have. He says, should I start Fields or Lamar? Of all, you're not going to have 2 premium quarterbacks unless you used Fields as your pickup or as your second quarterback.
Right.
And I think it's, I go Fields over Lamar. I think it's heretical, but I think you got to go with him right now.
Yeah, me too. I mean, there's only 3 quarterbacks that would play over him, I think, the rest of the year, and it's Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts.
Yep.
I think that's where I'm at. And it's very possible, with just maybe some bye weeks with Allen and Hurts and these other quarterbacks that have had, Lamar, these guys that have had some bye weeks, and you picked up Fields because he had those 2 matchups against tough defenses that he passed the test, like New England and Dallas. Nobody was really he was starting to trend up at that point, I believe. But nobody was really buying into it as a top 12 quarterback who's starting a single quarterback league, especially with those matchups. Then he was awesome in those matchups. And now he's gone through some pretty easy teams. And, with that question, I would consider selling one of the 2 so you can have a little bit more balance. And if you're in a league with trades, a little bit more balance of the squad. The
last time I remember this dynamic is when people drafted Cam Newton as a rookie. And they'd take him. Oh yeah, what the heck? He'll be my backup. I went up against a guy in my home league in the championship game. He had Drew Brees in his record-setting year, and he also had Cam. He never pulled off a deal because no one wants to trade for the new guy. They'll trade for Lamar probably, but they probably won't trade for Fields for full price. So I think that's the solution on that.
Yeah, and you probably get a better return with a name like Lamar. Some people may not be buying into Fields. They see Fields on bye, week 14, playoff schedule, Bills, Eagles. Not ideal, but I mean, it's really between the 2 guys. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong there, but I got Fields ranked higher this week.
Yeah, I do too. We're going to move on to running backs, but first, a note from our friends on the Blue Wire Network. All of RotoWire's podcasts are hosted on the Blue Wire Network. We thank them for hosting us and play their ads. Let's move on to running backs. There's really only one big time pickup at running back this week off the waiver wire, and that's Isaiah Pacheco, who is still available in 3/4 of the leagues out there.
Yeah.
Again, not in the NFFC. We always have to have that caveat there because 20-man rosters, savvy players, etc. But the question is twofold for you. If you still have waivers left, you got say a Wednesday night or Thursday morning waivers like I do in a few leagues. How much of your fab are you using on Pacheco, and how many backs can you start over him?
I got him at 20 right now. So I have him ranked kind of aggressively. I don't know where
I have
you're
him
at
18.
there, but I mean,
yep.
So a little bit higher. I could see myself bumping him ahead of Deontay Foreman and Miles Sanders, who I don't love this week in a tough spot. Even maybe James Conner. Pretty telling how I think the Chiefs feel about Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now. If that report is true, that they put in a claim for Benjamin. Benjamin, I would say he probably would have been sprinkled in 3rd down situations, maybe cut in a little bit to Jerick McKinnon. I know he was dealing with an injury last week, but he played last week. He ended up suiting up in that game and catching a few passes. I think that CEH is just pretty much finished inside this offense at the moment. I mean, 4 snaps the last time we saw him.
Yeah,
I think he's done. A couple weeks ago, we heard that he was going to be the starting running back. Everyone went nuts on Twitter on Sunday morning, and he did start that game. Nothing happened. Everybody dropped him. Right. There was the bye week sprinkled in. Everybody cut their ties. But I do have some waivers that run here. Unfortunately, he's not available in any of those leagues. But if I needed a running back, my goodness, I would be spending a big chunk of my fab, depending on how much you have left. I mean, I may even empty the tank.
I agree
on this guy.
It's week 11
to get him at this time of the year. Exactly. Yeah. What are you waiting for?
Yeah. You got to get into the tournament, and you don't get into the tournament by being cautious right now. You go get, if you need a starter, go get him. Absolutely.
Yeah. High-powered offense. They're going to score some points, lean on the run maybe in some games. They got some very winnable games coming up, Jeff. And we all know that this matchup is the best matchup on paper. It's been the best matchup for a running back over the past couple of years against the Chargers.
100%.
A team that can't stop the run. So, yeah, I mean, 15 plus touches in this offense, sign me up.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing too, the only negative on him is he doesn't catch passes. I mean, in fact, I don't even think he's going to be in on passing downs at all. That's almost all McKinnon.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to start. This is how hard up I am one league. I'm going to start McKinnon. It's a full point PPR as my RB2. I just don't really have a lot of other spots to go, unfortunately. I'm going to roll him out over A.J. Dillon against the Titans. I'm just going to take my chances and hope he catches a couple passes, maybe finds the end zone for me. That's maybe a little bit risky. I say Dillon probably safer, but I'm sick of getting 8 to 9 points every week from A.J. Dillon, unfortunately.
He's like that 4 carries inside the 5 this year. I mean,
and stuffed. Week 1, he had that touchdown, which is the only game he had a touchdown. He was stuffed before that play. Luckily, he got another one. And then last week or 2 weeks ago against Detroit, he had those 2 carries back to back inside the 5 and got stuffed. I mean,
it reminds me of Brandon Jacobs. Brandon Jacobs, he's going to be this goal line stud. He's going to be the next Bettis. And no,
not quite.
Or Ron Dane. I don't want to rub my RotoWire Madison colleagues' noses in it there, but Ron Dane was not much of a pro. So we'll see about that. But anyways, it's really weird. And the thing is, and then there's Austin Eckler, completely different player, fantastic at the goal line. It's always one of my big pet peeves to see these smaller backs never get the chance at the goal line because they're not these big guys that can bowl you over.
Right. But sometimes to Eckler, I mean, he's so agile and his movement is so fantastic. I mean, I don't think anybody has more touches or opportunities inside the red zone than him in terms of carries and targets and things like that. At least after the past few weeks, it's been that way. He's been finding the end zone every single game. So yeah, some of these smaller guys, they find a way to get in where I guess you just feel like, if Dillon's on the field, what we've seen is that teams are really just stuffing him, stacking the box, and it's not working out. It's been a rough year for him.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I've been trying to find Rachaad White on waiver wires, even though we can't play him this week, because who knows about Fournette's hip? I know they said it's not that big of a deal, but first reaction sometimes on those is always downplays it, and then you find it. Absolutely. Oh yeah, he needs a hip replacement. So we'll find out. But he was already getting a lot of the carries anyhow, even before Fournette's injury.
Yeah, love White, big player. Somebody we've talked. 2 players that I feel like I maybe some of my viewers will win a lot of consolation brackets this year from some players that I talked about. Drafting like Christian Watson, Rachaad White, and we had a big game from Nico Collins there. So it's taken a long time for some of these players, but Rachaad White is a really nice player, and they were getting nothing from Leonard Fournette on the ground. It was one of the worst rushing teams in football. That was really a lot of it actually is the offensive line, but it was really nice to see them run the ball, have more of a balanced attack on Seattle. Rachaad White, he definitely looks a lot fresher than Leonard Fournette. It could be a 2-week thing. To your point, it's bad. It's good and bad timing, I think, for the bye. It's bad because I think if it was this week, we would see potentially Fournette rest, and it'd be a lot of White in there, but also decent for a rookie running back. Maybe another week to learn more of the playbook and as the starter, because he started that game in Germany. The whole first series was basically him, and he closed it out for them too. So he could be one of, over the past couple of years we've seen this with rookie running backs. Javonte Williams last year, and then Cam Akers 2 years ago started to overtake the backfield in Los Angeles. I think we could see that. I don't know if Fournette's going to fully go away because he's a good pass blocker and good near the goal line, but I think White is a guy you want to have.
He's ascendant. When we last saw Joe Mixon in week 9, he was having the high point for a fantasy player for the entire season. Prior to that, though, it had been pretty disappointing. We're less than 4 yards a carry again. The revamped Bengals offensive line still not really able to open a whole lot of holes for him. And he's less able to make tacklers miss than he did in the past, at least pre-Carolina. What do you do with him this week against Pittsburgh?
There's not a lot of guys, honestly, I would start over or not start. I have him at 10. I could see myself. I got Cook behind him, Pierce behind him, but those are 2 guys. Pierce is in a tough spot, but I wouldn't get mad at anybody if they wanted to start Pierce over Joe Mixon. I think he's doing enough in the passing game, at least lately, with Jamar Chase out and maybe no Chase this week, that he can help you out in that situation. But you're right. He has not been efficient at all. I mean, he's had talk about a guy inside the red zone this year that couldn't get any touchdowns, whether you feel like he was unlucky or not. I mean, you mentioned it. They all came the last time we saw him. It was like regression in the other way, but he was I think for the first 7 weeks of the season, he was first or second in carries inside the 20, inside the 10, inside the 5. The percentage of his team's rushing attempts inside the 10, the 5, significant, and really nothing to show for it. I was at a game live in New York this year at MetLife, the Jets and the Bengals, and he had a bunch of carries inside. He couldn't get it done. Chris Evans ended up coming away with the touchdown. I think it was through the air, but
right.
I just play him. It's his backfield. He's getting some catches.
Trust the volume.
Yeah, I trust the volume there.
I'm with you on that one there. A guy that's not getting the volume, and I get more questions about this player than anybody else right now, is DeAndre Swift. Because
that's a good one.
I don't know where to rank him in any given week, because he's capable of having just that one big play. I mean, you've seen it all year when he has played. They did double his snap count from 9 to a whopping 18 last week.
It's trending up.
I've got him still like 29 among my running backs this week, though, because I can't trust.
I got him at 27. He's in this group of players I can't seem to trust. Najee Harris, if Zeke comes back, Michael Carter's in this range for me.
Yes.
The 2 Baltimore backs and Kenyon Drake and Gus. If one of those guys are out, I will bump whoever is playing up a little bit. AJ Dillon is behind it, but yeah, I mean,
I'm looking at the same list here. Yeah.
You and I are on the same page here. He has the upside. I mean, last year before the injury, he was right there with Austin Eckler in fantasy points per game. He was a top 6 running back before the injury happened. This year, even at the start of the season with Jamal Williams taking some of his goal line carries, and I do believe Williams is the goal line back there, regardless if Swift is bumped up to 50% of the snaps. I think we'll see Williams as the goal line back. It's a good matchup against the Giants.
Yep.
He's a guy I get a lot of questions about too, and he's been one of the most traded players. I looked at CBS Sports, the top 10 traded players in fantasy over the last 24 hours. He was number 2. So I think people are, maybe they're either sick of him or an opportunity to buy low. I would try to buy if I could. And hey, if I can get this guy as my RB3 or a flex in a full point setting down the stretch, I think it's worth the gamble. I wouldn't give up too much, but I also think it's worth the gamble to maybe play him in a full point setting. If he can just get 4 or 5 catches and maybe 4 or 5 carries, I know it doesn't seem like a lot there, 10 touches. We're talking about a flex play here. He has the upside to maybe, get you double-digit fantasy points.
Let me tell you, Chris, I'm in the said dynasty league that I was talking about earlier. I have Swift, and every week I get 2 to 3 offers, people trying to buy low on Swift. So everybody thinks it's a good idea to try to buy low on them.
Yeah.
I'm like, the best I get is like a back end of the first round pick, like 11th or 12th. I'm like, no.
No point in giving up for nothing. Yeah, I don't think. It's not the right time to sell him. I don't believe.
But I'm also not going to win. It's a terrible spot. I did a really awful job of managing this team. I think that's really the answer here to this here. I'll blame Sleeper again, but it's not the operator at all. No, but
no, not at all. I mean, you can't stay healthy, right? It's unfortunately for him. He shows us, when he's healthy, he could be an amazing back, electric back, drafted in the back end of the first round.
Mm-hmm.
But he's never had a full season in the NFL just yet.
Yeah, so he's super frustrating, and I'll just keep dealing with it every single week there. We're going to keep talking running backs, but first we got to share a note with our friends from No House Advantage. They're our title sponsor for this podcast. They are changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Playing pick'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning big cash prizes. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot at hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20 times your entry if you hit all of your picks. Bet on up to 5 player prop over-unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including the NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now with promo code NHAWIRE. That's NHAWIRE at nohouseadvantage.com, or download the app on the app stores to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You won't want to miss out on this. Big thanks to No House Advantage for their sponsorship. We're talking running backs with Chris Meaney from FTN Sport, FTN Fantasy, Mean Streets, you name it there. You can get them, follow them in a lot of different places. Also, of course, on Twitter. You make sure you can just follow him at Chris Meaney. Chris, let's talk Pittsburgh, because this is a big problem spot. You alluded to Najee Harris. dealing with a knee issue, coming off his best game, though, 20 for 99 last week. Didn't score, but he also put the ball on the ground. And Jaylen Warren looked better in his brief carries. What are you doing with the pair of Pittsburgh running backs this week?
Yeah, this is a mess. There was a report last week where, there was some talk about Najee maybe taking his seat or maybe potentially getting shut down. But as you alluded to, it was his best performance of the season. He came out hot. He looked great to start that game, and looked like he suffered an injury on the sidelines too. And, Warren looked pretty good as well. I got Najee in that group. Like I said, you have both of these guys. I would play, the high ceiling in Najee. I think Warren is a decent flex play. I got him in this range with Kareem Hunt and Jerick McKinnon and James Robinson, who I don't really love, but maybe he's more involved in the offense, after a bye week. And he had a pretty decent game, his second game with the Jets. He scored a touchdown there, receiving touchdown. But I don't really have huge expectations for him. I don't until, Najee is shut down or they decide to, just get away from him, which I just don't think that they will unless they just fully shut him down. If he's been dealing with the injury, had to list Frank to start the season and, throw training camp and things like that. It's possible, but maybe they shut him down and look at this guy. But as long as Najee's active, he's always going to be ranked higher for me. And it's not a great deal at the moment. But Warren has looked like the better back over the past couple of weeks. It looks like a little bit fresher, and he's catching more passes than Najee. I know that.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I contend that Harris has been dealing with a foot injury all throughout the beginning part of the season there. Maybe he's healed a little bit more now, but I have Warren in some key spots I've been holding all along, and I may have be forced to play him in a couple places, but I might actually be, for the first time all season, kind of like, yay, maybe kind of excited about this. It might work.
Yeah, like a flex play for you. Yeah, and if they shut down Najee, maybe you're looking at a running back there that's going to get 20 touches all of a sudden.
Yeah, fantasy playoffs, baby. Let's go. How about the Bears? Now that Khalil Herbert's out, how high do you have David Montgomery?
I got him at 13, I believe, so pretty high. Originally a 14, so I have him after Ramondre and Aaron Jones. Now, I probably would put Pollard ahead of him if Zeke plays. I'll give the benefit of the doubt to Pollard. He's been really good over the past couple of weeks without Zeke. And Jamal dealing with Swift, and then Singletary with the snow, and Connor in a tough spot. So, yeah, this opens up an opportunity for Dave Montgomery. Khalil has looked at times like the better back in this Bears offense, not catching a lot of passes, but looks more explosive. And nothing against Montgomery. He's had some really good campaigns. He's been a big player in the passing game over the past couple of seasons, but now it looks like potentially his backfield, right? Abner maybe gets in there a couple catches, but haven't seen a lot of dump offs from Justin Fields over the past few weeks.
No, you're not going to.
It's not a lot of that. So I'd say he's a top borderline, high in RB2 this week.
I've got him at 14 as well. The ordering might be slightly different, but like I'm operating on the assumption that Pollard starts. I'll move Zeke up once we see more practice reports. Just after last week's pump fake, I need a full clearance before I push him higher on the rankings there. On that one there. Let's move on to wide receivers because there's a lot of it. This is where it's really tough. This is where we're going to earn our money this week. So many guys on bye, so many other players injured. Cooper Kupp now out minimum 4 weeks, probably more. What do you, if you don't have an IR spot in your league, what are you doing with Cooper Kupp?
I tried, if I had Cooper Kupp and I wasn't in a playoff spot, I would look to the people who are up at the top that were maybe having a really good season, that maybe they're headed for a bye. I'd say, hey, do you want Cooper Kupp? I'd try to sell him on the point where maybe he's going to be back in 4 weeks. You're going to have Cooper Kupp as on your fantasy football roster come fantasy football playoff time. Hey, we know his upside. It's still there. So that's what I would try to do. I would try to sell him, get bodies now in my lineup, take the loss, right? He's not playing for one, so it's not going to help you out for the next 4 weeks where you need wins. Like you said earlier, you just got to get to the dance. So give me some players that I can play in the next couple of weeks, try to fill out my buys, try to fill the gap from Cooper Kupp, the loss of him. And, maybe a top team would take him. Maybe their bench is loaded. Maybe they have Kadarius Toney on their bench and they don't feel like they're going to play this guy over the next couple of weeks because they already have studs at the wide receiver position. What's it to them? Take the shot on having a guy like Cooper Kupp. That's the way I would treat things. But if nobody's biting, you may just have to cut your losses and get some healthy bodies now to get those W's. Because I do have a feeling that by the time he's healthy and ready to go, the Rams are done. They could be officially out of it, and maybe they just shut him down.
Right. And I don't think it's 4 weeks. When you get a range of 4 to 8 and there's surgery involved, I think it's going to be longer. I think we're looking at like 6 weeks, which is like, it might be one game and it might be worth it to you. That's the thing is, but it's going to be hard to withstand that. But we're missing so many good wide receivers this week.
I know.
It's really, really tough. Let's look at I get to 20 and I'm already starting to feel a little queasy. Like I'm like, okay, there's Rondale Moore, but it's against the Niners. Like, okay, I'm gonna start him, obviously, but it's not feeling great. Darnell Mooney, you never know what you're gonna get at him. Deontay Johnson, wow, talk about a guy whose stock it keeps on dropping there. I mean, Kenny Pickett's terrible.
He's bad. Yeah, it's better, I guess. What else? There are other options, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess
he's getting volume, but he's not scoring any touchdowns. I wouldn't be shocked if he had 0 touchdowns, Deontay, at the end of the season. Would you be shocked if he had 0 touchdowns this year? We'll run out of games for him to get one.
Yeah. Playing my Bengals this week, so I'll probably get it this week, but I'm fatalist. No. They lost their best cover corner. So that's my excuse, and I'm gonna stick by it there. But it's pretty bad. It is really bad. Let's look at some of these guys here. What are you doing with Michael Pittman against the Eagles this week? Now they has Matt Ryan back.
Yeah, and Ryan is going, or Darius Slay is going to be on Pittman. This Eagles team I follow pretty closely. I feel like Darius Slay is going to be on Pittman, and I feel like James Bradbury is going to be on Alec Pierce. So I think Paris Campbell is going to continue to get a majority of the targets from Matt Ryan. It's been the last 3 games with Matt Ryan. I got him written down here. 32 targets, 24 catches, 203 yards, and 3 touchdowns. It's 50 fantasy points over the last 3 games. Even if he doesn't score those touchdowns, you're still looking like 32 targets. It's pretty healthy. That's 10 targets per game with Matt Ryan. The 2 games, without Ryan, with Ellinger, he was a no-go. So in the slot, with no Avonte Maddox there for the Eagles, I think he's probably the guy. It's tough to sit here and say that I would start Paris Campbell over Michael Pittman. We clearly has the upside, but one thing I really noticed with Matt Ryan earlier in the year when they played the Broncos and Patrick Surtain was always all over Michael Pittman. Yeah. And Alec Pierce had that breakout game. And Matt Ryan just didn't care. He just didn't want to throw Surtain's way. He wasn't going to do it. He kept peppering Alec Pierce. And later in that game, with the game on the line now, not a lot happened in that game. I don't even know if there's a touchdown. I remember it was a primetime game, of course, and it went to overtime. Nothing happened.
No touchdowns, you're right.
We saw Surtain focus in. He was like, screw this. I'm going over to Alec Pierce, and I'm covering this guy. And we saw him kind of change that, who he was covering. So I feel like we could see a similar situation here with Matt Ryan, maybe just focusing in again on Paris Campbell. So I'm a little hesitant about Michael Pittman, but like you said, who are you going to start over him? I'm definitely starting Cooper and Boyd and Devontae Smith. I think Garrett Wilson I would start over him, even in a tough spot against the Pats. He's getting a lot of targets. Jacoby Myers, same deal. I mean, is Sauce Gardner going to be on him?
Right.
Right. The 2 defenses, tough spot. DJ Moore getting targets, but Baker Mayfield in Baltimore. I like Rondale Moore. I know you mentioned San Fran. This is a guy who's got 31 targets over his last 3 games. Him and Hopkins are both inside the top 10 in target share over the past 3 weeks. No Zach Ertz. You hope that it's Kyler under center, but I probably like him a little bit more than some of these other guys in tough spots.
At least they have McCoy as the backup, maybe, although McCoy's got his own injury. So that's something to watch for too, a little bit. But if they go down to the 3rd string quarterback, then all bets are off. But let me repackage this a little bit. So we're afraid of Surtain. We're afraid of Sauce Gardner. What other corners do we fear right now?
I think we definitely feared Darius Slay.
McLaurin didn't.
I know. In 2 games. In 2 games this year, he crushed the Eagles.
Yeah.
I still think we fear him. They moved him around a little bit. Darius wasn't on him the entire time, but yeah, he did. You bring up a good point, and it's 2 games in a row now. His receiving yard prop is at 43. It's something that we crushed over at FTN. Even in that tough spot, we liked it. I didn't expect him to have that big of a game, but
right,
for the most part, Darius has been pretty good. Against corners. Now they haven't faced, or against wide receivers. Now they haven't faced a ton of them, but
he was
there's
good
not a lot.
Jefferson.
I guess he was really good against Jefferson. That may have been a little bit of Kirk Cousins there. There's a couple of bad throws in that game from Kirk, but he was good against, and he was great last year too. Maybe we can just say Terry's got his number. This year, familiar with each other. Division opponents. They've seen each other a lot, but even dating back to last year without Bradbury on the other side, Darius is pretty good. I don't know though. Like Jair Alexander's had some moments in other games where he hasn't seemed so fearful as a shutdown guy, but I still do. He's a guy that I down tick a wide receiver if they're, going up against him in matchups, and we don't got to worry about the Titans throwing the football to wideouts this week, but usually is a guy that I would consider. And I don't know, last week we saw Ramsey kind of follow Hopkins around, but Hopkins was okay. He got some catches.
Yeah, he got like 100 yards and 10 catches, so he was fine. It's interesting. And I remember it's so funny. I keep going to Jefferson, who back-to-back weeks, Slate, he didn't have a good game against Slate, didn't have a good game against Okudah. I'm like, is Okudah a grown man now? Is he starting to play great? And then DK Metcalf was like torched him, just destroyed him.
He did.
Like, okay, we're gonna slow down those. I think we as an industry probably have ever since Revis, I think, started to pay a lot more attention to wide receiver versus corner. And I think sometimes we build up the notion of a shutdown corner. Like there aren't 10 shutdown corners out there. There's like 3 or 4.
Right. And it's crazy that I think one of them is Sauce Gardner. Like he's only been in the league for a minute. And I know a lot of people on Twitter, they talk about him being handsy and things like that. But I'm looking right now at our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, courtesy of Jeff Ratcliffe, and Devontae Parker has the 3rd worst matchup up against Sauce Gardner this week. Jalen Ramsey's in there as well, but I mean, he's going to see Kevin White, so not a lot to worry about there. Exactly. But yeah, Sauce is one of those guys. I mean, he did it in college. He's got a lot of swag. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's a ball hawk too. He's going to be a good one.
Yeah. I love how at the beginning of the year, like, he has to earn the title, Sauce. Okay, that lasted about 4 seconds.
He earned it, all right.
He's just fine. But yeah, it's because all this it's really important to pay attention. I get it, and Jeff Ratcliffe does great work on that. Mike Clay did it forever, does it forever. They do great stuff. But it's sometimes like, okay, it's
too
not
much.
just that they're good. It's like, is it with this quarterback against this particular type of receiver? How good is that matchup?
Good call. Yeah. When you really look into it, you want to, and Michael Pittman's not one of those guys that I feel like is a terrific route runner like Terry McLaurin. I think he's more of a, throw it up to him, let him go up and get it, contested catches. I'm sure he can get a couple of those, but if you got a terrific route runner, and you saw, I mean, you didn't Terry Burton slay a couple times on his route running ability. And there was one play, man, Slay got lucky. There was one play where Terry looked like he was going outside. He cut in and he ran into him. And if he didn't run into him, he would have blew by him. Yep. And it could have been a play where it was like an 80-yard touchdown to the house. So you get those terrific route runners out there that could, bypass those shutdown corners.
Right. And Heineke tends to unlock McLaurin too, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Carson Wentz, he disappeared for a few games, and I can't even fathom the Commanders contemplating switching back to Wentz this week. Maybe later this season, but coming off a Monday night, no way can you do that.
He's got a 35% target share and 56% air yard share, Terry McLaurin, over the last 3 weeks. Now, the air yard share is number 1 in the NFL, and the target share is just behind, the elite guys and Justin Jefferson and Stephon Diggs.
Novel concept. You got your best receiver, get him more targets.
Get him the ball. It's that simple. Yeah. Come on, Wentz, figure it out.
Yes. So please leave Heineke in there. We'll talk a couple more ranks here and take your questions, but first, got to take care of a couple of notes. First, we got a new sponsor from StatHead. It's easy to find Derrick Henry statistics from this year. With a quick Google search and a visit to Pro Football Reference, you can see he's rushed for over 900 yards and 9 TDs. But that raises more questions. How many other players have hit those marks through 9 games? How many did it at Henry's age? To answer those questions, there's StatHead. StatHead is your all-access pass to the Pro Football Reference database. In StatHead, you can compare up to 6 players' stats side by side to determine who to start and who to sit, or you could dig through advanced stats to find the perfect player to add off waivers. There is an array of simple tools that unlock an endless number of search options, all using the same easy-to-use interface that you already know from Pro Football Reference. Plus, StatHead lets you browse Pro Football Reference ad-free. Sign up with promo code RotoWire for $20 off an annual subscription to StatHead. I use StatHead for baseball, actually. I use it for a lot for my score sheet leagues, a lot of sim leagues. It's a fantastic tool. Highly, highly recommend it there. And then our other sponsor is our friends from Monkey Knife Fight. Football is officially back on Monkey Knife Fight with all the NFL action that you're looking for. And if college football is more your speed, they've got plenty of that too. On Monkey Knife Fight, there's no sharks, no salary caps, and no math. It's easy to play, easy to win, daily fantasy player props. Join now at monkeyknifefight.com and you'll get your first game free. Then use promo code RWNFL to get your first deposit matched instantly up to $100. So what are you waiting for? Join Monkey Knife Fight today. We are back. I'm with Chris Meaney from FTN and Mean Streets. Chris, let's talk tight ends. It was a disastrous week in tight ends. Dallas Goedert on IR now. Zach Ertz out for the season. That was confirmed today. Cole Kmet is not really available in too many leagues, but if he is, of course, snatch him up. I'm kind of curious, how high do you have Kmet in your rankings this week?
I got him at 8. I do have him one spot ahead of Gary Dulcich. I feel like Hawkinson, Schultz, Kittle, inside the top 5, Freiermuth. I was sour on Higbee for a little bit. I know last week was a matchup against Arizona. Everybody seems to have a great, every tight end seems to pop off against the Cardinals. But with no Cooper Kupp here, I think, he's probably in line for more targets than Kmet and Dulcich. But that's how I ran out my top 10. I'm a big Cole Kmet guy. It took a little bit of time. I'm a big fan of his ability. I know he's on a team that, they're starting to unleash Fields. Obviously, we're starting to see it. You get Claypool in the offense, you got Meaney. All of a sudden, there's some weapons there. And we talked about the defense not being great. I know a lot of people, will look to his touchdowns and say there's been some blown coverage and things. Sure, they did happen. But when you're a dual quarterback like that, when you can run,
yes,
you take some shots down the field. It leaves some of these guys are wide open in the middle of the field. So I like Cole Kmet. We're starting to see it now. Didn't look like we were going to get the 3.5 touchdown future from him, but he's done.
And then you got it in 3 weeks. Beautiful.
I know, unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, the
just
first
in time for these injuries.
That long Kmet touchdown. You said it looked like a blown coverage, but that's because he's mobile, like you said.
Exactly.
He was running to the left where he had been killing him all day long. Throws across the field, of course, because they're all looking at the quarterback. It was such a well-designed play. And and the thing is, I want to castigate the Bears for why didn't you unlock him earlier? But sometimes I think these things take time. I think it takes time for the quarterback to learn the offense, learn the system, learn the speed of the game and all that. And you add more stuff as he gets it.
Exactly. Listen, young quarterback, right? First full year as a starter. Talk about the head coaching staff, right? Young. This is their first full year. Then you got Cole Kmet, who's in year 3. And last year, from an average standpoint, he was top 12 in targets and yards and catches among tight ends. He didn't have any touchdowns. You give him 3 or 4 touchdowns, he finishes a top 10 tight end. And this year, he wasn't scoring any touchdowns. Now they're starting to come. He's very athletic. I think he's a great tight end in the league. And good for you if you were able to buy low on him in dynasty leagues, because moving forward, he's a guy that I really like.
Absolutely. Agreed. Among the pickups this week, so Kmet's gone. Do you like Foster Moreau or Isaiah Likely, or the replacements for either Ertz or Goddard better?
Yeah, I think, in my rankings, double check Dulcich because he was inside the top 10 and the most dropped in Yahoo. So for people that are playing Yahoo leagues with their families and buddies, you heard a lot of rumblings about him, and then he didn't do anything in that game. But you talk about Judy, maybe Judy doesn't play, and we talk about the matchup against Las Vegas. Good spot, and he had a target deep down the field, a deep target, which he has gotten inside this offense, and Russ just overthrew him. It was off his fingertips. If he catches that, I think it was a 65-yard touchdown, and we're talking about him as a must start. But I would say Foster Moreau. I like Njoku. Sounds like maybe he could play, but we talked about the weather, so he could be a risky play there. I have Hayden Hurst ahead of him just slightly, with no Jamar Chase potentially this week. He has gotten some targets, maybe he can get you 4 or 5 catches. But Foster Moreau, I think, is actually a pretty decent tight end. I think he is. I think he's one of the better backup tight ends in the league. I don't think we're going to see Waller again this year. So I think we'll see Foster Moreau, who could be an interesting tight end for you moving forward. I know it's a tough spot against Denver, but you got Surtain and Adams. That should be a fun matchup between those two guys. And then who else really could step up for Derek Carr? So I like Foster. And then I got I got some of these guys that I don't feel great about starting, but Taysom Hill, I don't want to start Taysom Hill. I'm just so done with Taysom Hill. I'd rather get a pass catcher in there, like maybe Knox, Everett. Trey McBride, I got at 18. Juwan Johnson, I got at 19. Likely, I got at 20.
I've got likely a little higher, but that's only because I'll move likely down when it gets more likely that Andrews plays. Andrews was limited today. So
I know, and he's a guy that I almost dropped last week, but I've held on because of that. And I wonder if he could be a borderline start for people, even if Andrews plays. Because what else is there on this team? I mean, Duvernay gets a couple touches here and there. Lamar spread it around to numerous wide receivers in that game against the Saints, but nobody really stood out. Deshaun Jackson, I think, suffered the hamstring injury right away. There's just not a lot inside this offense. They like to throw the tight end. They could use both of these guys. Maybe Andrews plays this week. Maybe he's limited. So likely is somebody that I probably should bump up a bit. I should probably even get him, ahead of Conklin and McBride and Everett, regardless of, Andrews or not. McBride is going to be interesting because he probably should play like 90% of the snaps. And that's always appealing to me for a tight end.
Yeah, but I've got him at 17 myself. And the Bryant versus Njoku thing, McBride versus Steven Anderson. Okay. We'll figure all that out. There's a lot of those that I'm going to have to do a lot of pivoting here as the week goes on. I always do a first set of rankings Tuesday night, and then I update them again on Thursday afternoon. After two practices, then I have a better idea what's going to happen here. Before we get Q&A, defenses to stream this week. I'm going to give you three options. Commanders, Bengals, Jets. Who do you got?
I really like all three of those defenses. I would say the Commanders are in a pretty good spot. It does sound like maybe a Chase will come back this week, Chase Young. So, I mean, you got Allen and Payne and Chase, right? That's deadly. That's nasty. Getting after the quarterback, right? Mills hasn't shown us a whole lot there. They're really strong against the run. So if they can slow Pierce down a bit, maybe force Mills into some throws, and maybe they can create a couple turnovers there. So I think that's an interesting defense to stream for me.
Yeah. And I do like all three as well. And those are pretty much available. I've noticed too. Bengals coming off the bye, Jets coming off the bye. I mean, bye weeks create a lot of tension. A lot of people stream anyhow. So there you go. All right. You ready to tackle some questions here?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
We got a bunch of them in the forum here. So let's go ahead and hit it. George says he's got to drop one of these two, Vikings or Cards defense, and start the other. Who would you if forced to start one of those two, Vikings or Cards? Who do you got?
I probably start the Cards in that situation. Hopefully Jimmy can throw a pick or two. I think the Vikings have a better defense, but up against Dallas, I don't love it.
Yeah. Those are my 18 and 19 defenses, respectively there. So, and I do have Arizona a one peg ahead of the Vikings. So cut the Vikings to go get your kicker there. All right. Jay says, yes, Mitchell, Warren, Dillon, and Hilliard. He could drop Hilliard for McKinnon, Hubbard, or K. Williams. Who should he start? I'm guessing one of these. Hopefully not both. Hopefully not two from this bunch. I mean, I've been there before, not judging, but which one of these guys would you prefer?
Geez, I may go. I know I didn't talk up Dillon. I didn't really have a lot of nice things to say about AJ Dillon, but I do believe he has the highest ceiling out of that bunch. Elijah Mitchell. You could go Elijah Mitchell if you want. It's a good offense against San Fran. They could be up double digits, and maybe they I'm assuming that's Elijah, right? Shanahan said after the game, I do believe him. I know he can throw us for a loop a couple times, but I do believe him when he said that the game plan was to have those two guys have equal amount of carries. And for Elijah just coming back off the injury.
Yeah, and he looked good.
Who is the closer? Yeah, Elijah is probably the closer in that system. So, and he did look good. So I changed my tune. Maybe I'll go Elijah. It's very risky, but you just hope that it's a team that wants to run the ball, and they keep CMC fresh. Everyone's freaking out. They trade all that capital. What they traded for is CMC in the playoffs. I don't think we'll see a lot of that in the playoffs, but
really
right now
point.
Down the stretch, I think Elijah.
Yeah. Quick one here. Yes, Komet or Everett. I'll answer this one. Komet. Very easy. Move on.
Yeah.
All right. We did this. So let's keep rolling. Let's talk about, let's keep rolling here on some of these. Sorry. I'm showing questions that, this is me being a Luddite here. Bear with me. Okay. Flex start here from KJ Frederick. Amari Cooper versus Gus the Bus, Deontay Foreman, Paris Campbell, or Darius Slayton. Full point PPR.
It really does depend on the weather for sure. I think I want to start Amari Cooper in that game in a potential, high scoring affair. But if it's 3 to 6 feet of snow, I'd probably go the other way.
Yeah.
Deontay Foreman against Baltimore. They're starting to get a little bit better defensively. I like the Wilcon Smith addition there. Don't know if I'm trusting Gus Bus off the injury. And I may go Paris Campbell there.
I can see it. I think that's defensible.
I think Foreman or Paris. Foreman or Paris. You're looking at a full point PPR. I like Slayton too, as against Detroit, but I think Paris is probably in line for a little bit more volume.
I agreed. All right, let's keep rolling. Chaka says, trade away Mark Andrews and Amari Cooper for Hawkinson and Jamar Chase in a PPR league.
Wow. Andrews and Cooper for Hawkinson and Chase. I think that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I do too.
It's some risk with Chase, but if you're in a good spot, playoff time, you think you're going to get there, you can get to the dance. I'd rather have Chase than Cooper, and Hawkinson and Andrews is not that far off, I don't think.
Yeah, I agreed. All right, we're going to do about 3-4 more questions before we sign off. Marco says, should I give away ETN and Ramondre for CD and T. Higgins? He just lost Cup, still has Christian McCaffrey.
I would keep ETN, man. I really like the usage from ETN. Yeah. He's just getting all the work out of the backfield. He reminds me a little bit of Jamal Charles. I don't know if he's going to be able to hold up like Jamal. It's a tough comparison there, but Ramondre is a guy I really like too. But Harris coming back, he could sneak a couple goal line touches there. Nobody's taking anything away from Travis Etienne. He's getting all the goal line work there. He's getting the passing down work. So I like him. I would move Ramondre for either one of those guys. I'd prefer CD over T.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I'd go the same route there. All right. GR Reed says it's a start sit one here. Peoples Jones, Campbell, Watson, and Lazard need to start 2.
Tough to roll out 2 Packers. I do have Lazard ranked ahead of Watson. Watson's going to be very boom or bust down the stretch here, I do believe, for people. But I'm into the boom. I'm into rolling the dice and hoping that he can be that guy for me. I'd probably go Lazard and Campbell. It's tough not to start Watson, but do you roll out 2 Packers?
No, I go Lazard Campbell. I go Lazard Campbell. Watson, I think, like you said, it's boom or bust. I think if you're like projected to be an underdog, maybe you go that route.
Absolutely.
I don't see them putting up a big number against Tennessee, though.
I don't either.
This is going to be a slugfest.
Yeah. See if you can sell high on Watson, maybe.
Yeah, not a bad idea. All right, guys, unfortunately, we can't answer every single question here. We appreciate everybody that does. Otherwise, we'd be like recording for 2.5 hours. So we thank everybody for jumping on board. You can hit us up on Twitter. You can and please check out Chris's work at FTN. Listen to his work. You can follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Meaney, Meaney. Follow me at Jeff_Erickson. Hit us up there if you didn't get your question answered. Use our respective services. We both have a lot of, we have rankings, we have customer support, we have Ask an Expert. I'm sure FTN has a similar aspect there. You can ask your set questions and also your Twitter questions there. We'll hit them all up as best we can. And I know we have people lined up just to do that sort of thing. So appreciate Chris. Awesome time talking with you. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, man, this has been a blast. I appreciate you asking me to come on here. You're one of the GOATs in the industry. So thank you so much, and good luck the rest of the way. Hopefully you can bring down a championship or 2, and all your viewers and listeners as well. Thanks a lot for having me.
You bet. Chris Meaney, everybody. All right, coming up tomorrow, we got John and Mario, as always. Thanks for listening to RotoWire. Take care.